So this next little envelope of pictures was of the Pedro dog. That's Snakeman's Pedro. There's one picture that's famous out there. It was taken in my driveway. But there was lots of other pictures taken at the same time, outtakes. And I've got 10 of them here. I will say that I don't think about Pedro a whole lot, but I do have some thoughts and feelings about him. He was primarily in Snakeman's hands a big part of his life, hence Snakeman's Pedro. But he had as I remember it, again, I don't make a habit of studying this stuff and hadn't thought about it for decades. I think his first original name was Wee Willie. And as I remember it, I think a Cox fellow from down in Alabama, maybe entirely wrong about that, but that's how I remember it. Cox fellow owned him, and he had two successful Bob Cox. Okay, I'm getting some independent verification here. And he had two successful hog hunts when he left Mr. Cox's hands. And I should say a little bit about his pedigree. Beautifully bred dog, Rascal and Oso Negro were littermate brothers. And Oso Negro was bred to Honey Bunch. I believe that produced Sandy. Sandy was bred to Rascal. So Rascal was bred to his niece to produce Pedro. So that's a beautiful pedigree. Honey Bunch being a highly acclaimed producer. Rascal and Oso Negro being 3/4 from the Eli side, and I believe the quarter was Orphan Annie, which is Bolio type stuff. And the dog again became Pedro whenever Snakeman got him. And there was a number of successful hunts that were reported on that dog, and he was awarded title grand champion. And above all, to me, was known to be an honest dog, a good game dog. Tell him we're filming.
Man, it's so crazy looking at these pictures, because you'll see one of them and you think a dog looks like something, and then you see him serious looking at something, and you're like, holy hell. Yeah. He kind of looks like Chemo sometimes, and then he kind of looks like just a fun-loving dog sometimes.
He was a 34, 35-pound dog in shape. Hold on just a second. What did Taylor need?
He just said, okay, do you want me to find out?
Yeah, find out what he needed. It's urgent. Okay, so anyway, getting back to Pedro, there was a point where Snakeman sold Pedro to a guy named Mike Harris. And Mike kept him for a while, and then offered him to me for sale. And I liked the dog. I liked the blood. He was not known to me as a super hard-mouthed dog. He was known above all to be a good game dog. So I purchased him and did some breeding with him, and I think we produced 3 title dogs with him in my hands. And I'm only remembering, I can only name 2 of them off the top of my head. There was I'll show you several pictures and then I'll try to point out the ones that earned titles. This one is was a female named Witch off of Pedro and Miss Snoopy. Miss Snoopy was a sister to Spike. She was a small bitch, not extremely athletic. She just one that looked inbred, even though she really wasn't. All right, so this dog was off of, this dog's name is Max Dugan. He was off of Pedro, bred to Brewer's Lady Snoody. She was alternately known Garner's Lady Snoody, Brewer's Lady Snoody. Tell you some interesting stories about her. She was cold. She had at least one blue eye. She was off of Snoody, bred back to Molly, Chinaman's mother. That's Snooty to Bloody Sunday. So she's double bred Snooty. Remember that I told you that she had a blue eye, at least one blue eye. That figures into another story I'll tell you later on in the podcast. So another interesting point is that there was a brother to Max Dugan. This dog was a show champion, and was an incredible athlete, tough as hell. Could have probably been a champion otherwise. But he had a brother who had two different names. His brother was a chocolate-colored dog. His name was initially it was Rojo for red, and his owner got into some problems, some trouble out in California, and this dog Rojo had to be liberated from a place that he was being confined, and to set him free and allow him to have a good life. And his name was changed at that point to California Fugitive. And so Champion Rojo came off of that breeding. That's one of the champions, one of the three that I produced off of Pedro. And again, Max Dugan and Rojo, and I may have a picture of him here somewhere, but I've not run across it yet.
You want to put
They
it
were-
there for
Yeah.
They were off of Pedro while Pedro was in my
Can
hands.
you get it to turn? I can't ever get that one to turn. You want me to try?
I'll figure it out.
Oh yeah, you see.
This is another. This is
Wife's
another.
calling.
This is another champion that I bred off of Pedro. This is Champion Beak, B-E-A-K. It was off of Pedro and Widow. Widow was a bitch that I bred off of two dogs off of Honey Bunch.
What's time? Like the time frame, like 90,
That would have been late 80s.
late 80s, okay.
Yeah. So Widow was off of Grand Champion Snake and Champion Missy. Snake was off of Otis and Honey Bunch. Missy was a sister to Jeep off of Bo and Honey Bunch. So I bred that pair together, kept the Widow bitch. I liked her. She was very athletic, very much like Snake. Bred her to Pedro and got Champion Beak. In terms of other pictures that I happen to have, there was a breeding that I did that I should have been a world beater based on the paperwork. Been a lot of dogs like that, all right? I was able to get my hands on a female, I think it was out of Texas, named D. D was out of Grand Champion Art bred to Rascal's sister, Queen. Okay, so I bred her to Pedro, Grand Champion Pedro. And I produced a little bitch called Bucky that I ended up letting Mike Michaud out of Phoenix, Arizona, formerly from Salt Lake City, if I remember correctly. Letting him have her, and I think he got some good offspring out of her and a dog that I let him have called Maurice. Maurice was a brother to Little Gator, had a Spike and Miss Molly. So for those of you who've done a little homework and you know these dogs, then this is meaningful to you, and I invite the rest of you to put this thing on pause and go Google, find out how these dogs are bred. You'll see the magic in them. But anyway, I've got two pictures here of Bucky off of Pedro and D. D is off of Art and Rascal's sister, Queen. Why I would ever sell a bitch like that, I have no idea. I must have been hungry.
One of the things I'm often embarrassed to not know enough about is just Snoody in general. Like, you have a tombstone out there, a Snooty, and I just hear people say, Snooty dog this, Snooty dog that, and it's like, well, I know what came after that, but like, if you could just talk about the significance of Snooty and what's behind that.
Well, that was where I was headed, actually.
All right.
And it's based on the comment that I made about Lady Snooty having a blue eye. I still get messages from folks asking me why I don't believe Carver, whenever Carver said Hooten Snake. Well, let me back up. Snooty is listed as being off of, everybody agrees he's off Hooten Snake to Art's Missy. But where the discrepancy is, whenever Carver read Hooten Snake to Art's Missy, he issued papers for Snooty that showed Hooten Snake as being off of Ironhead and Miss Spike. So it's Ironhead, Miss Spike, Pistol, Miss Spike, which makes a nice pretty pedigree, which might be enticing to a customer. But I knew Norman Hooten for years, Sheriff Norman Hooten. Sheriff of Brackettville, Texas, one of the baddest but best men that I've ever met. He was a Texas-sized man. He was I don't know, 6'3" or something in that neighborhood. And remember, whenever I'd see him after not seeing him for a while, I'd shake hands with him, and his hand would like completely wrap around mine. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I'm not the biggest wimp either. I felt like a kid beside him. But he was legendary in Texas for being a man's man. Sheriff of Brackettville, he arrested a lot of people, put a lot of guys in jail that needed to be in jail. And it was not unusual for them to talk trash about him while they were serving their sentence, about what they're going to do when they get out. Word would get back to Norman, and the day they were set free, he'd be standing out in the street in front of the jail waiting for them. And every time that the newly freed prisoner had the balls to try to back up what he claimed he was going to do, it didn't turn out well for him. It got him an ass kicking and a lecture about now that you've had the rest of your punishment, go try to be a man. So he was bigger than life. He was a fantastic human being. And his son is probably the greatest military hero alive today, having served to great distinction in Somalia with Delta Force. One of the best friends that I have. Fantastic guy. His whole family is a cut above. But at any rate, Norman Hooten, Sheriff Norman Hooten, bred Hooten Snake by breeding Butcher Boy to One Eye. And what I was told was that one of her eyes was blue. And that makes it easy to trace out the actual true pedigrees on a lot of these dogs. Snoody himself produced lots of blue-eyed dogs when he was bred tight. So that's not a common thing. So if his mother did in fact have a blue eye, that's why I call her One Eye, and it's popping up downstream, then in the fact that they look alike and they act alike, and the fact that one of the finest human beings that I've ever met bred the dogs in question and attest to the fact that that's how they're bred. And then somebody who's known to take liberties with pedigrees says otherwise, then it ain't hard to decide which side of this fence you come down on. I owned most of the important offspring of Snoody. Lots of double-bred dogs. At one time or another, they all passed through my hands, and Lady Snooty was one of them. There's been first Snooty offspring that I owned was my Amos dog, and nobody questioned anything about his pedigree for years. And then there was this guy who's always eager to stay in the spotlight, and he can't do it on just raw ability. And he does it by trying to create conflict. And he started the rumor that Amos was actually off of Rascal. If you know the context, you know how ridiculous that is. But let me say that we got a lot of blue-eyed dogs off of Amos when we bred him tight. Okay, that right there is enough to prove, that he was what his pedigree said. But beyond that, Rascal was only in this area for a couple of days. His first contest was in Wilson, North Carolina, and I'm not going to say he got his ass kicked, but he quit. He quit. So don't know why anybody would have been beating a path to get to him to breed a bitch to him. So the truth is the truth. Rascal. Let me throw in some other details lest I infuriate Rascal fans. It's well understood that the reason that he quit was because he lost interest, basically. And he was a young dog, and he had thrashed the hog one and the other, and just lost interest. And he went on to successfully perform in, 6 or 7 more hunts after that. Redeemed himself, produced a lot of great dogs, solid blood. I'd be happy to have a dog off a Rascal right now.
What do you think about that? To me, that shows some sign of intelligence, but I know to the purist, it's like, no, like destroy it till the end and all this.
I don't want to step on any toes out there.
Yeah.
But then I kind of don't mind either.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get in a toe stomping mood.
Yeah.
But the reality is that people who have to have everything divided into perfect black and white, they're out of touch with reality, because there ain't a whole lot of reality that breaks down into black and white.
Yeah.
And most of reality is some black and white and a whole lot of different shades of gray. And the ones who have to have it all converted into black and white, they don't have a lot of confidence in their intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay, it's more than they can manage to try to juggle all the variables involved in reality. They can't manage all of it. I can't manage all of it, but I can manage more of it than most people can. But whenever you try to reduce everything into black and white and say, well, dog that did this one time, that's what he is. No, dogs are not static beings. They might be the best in the world one day and be a 7.5 on 1 to 10 on another day. There are general trends that we have to honor, and the safest thing is to not mess with any of them that have ever failed. But there are times whenever there are other factors that make that indiscretion, that one out of character, outlying data point indiscretion, less meaningful than some would have it be.
Yeah, when I was looking through some old books and stuff from the 60s and 70s, I think there were a lot of things that were different, but one of the main things was that dogs are parts of families, and it looked like the people had more invested in the relationship with the dog than these days, where it becomes more of a statistical thing, and people are just like, well, good luck, and you better prove yourself, and they're not taking pictures even with the dog, or there's all these pictures with families, so it just seems a little bit different to me.
Well, families will allow each other an occasional screw up. And these guys who are that hardcore, basically they're trying to compensate for some deficiency in themselves through the dog, and they're trying to they get really butthurt if the dog fails, because then it looks like they failed.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man's got to retain some humanity in this whole process.
Same thing on the other side. If it succeeds, they feel like they succeeded.
I feel like
It's just like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
You didn't do
The
anything.
offense, yeah.
You didn't do a damn thing.
All you did was grab the green paper and run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you do, if you put time and effort and you built a relationship and you went through the whole process, you put something into it. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're not the one doing it.
You're not the one in there.
And if you ever did it, you know the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that reality is a hard, cold reality.